I note that there are a number of new members of our committee, and I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you who are joining us for the first time. I would like to remind you that our meeting is being recorded and streamed live on our website. Please note that, as announced by the table office, the list of speakers for debates during the committee meeting was closed 1 hour ago. All additional requests for the floor will be considered only if time allows. Thank you for your cooperation. Due to the time constraints, I would kindly ask to limit your interventions to 2 minutes. We may need to shorten this time depending on how our meetings progresses. Please pay attention to the timer which is visible on the screens. So first point of our agenda, it is adoption of agenda. Dear colleagues, I call the General Committee on Political Affairs and Security to order. Our first order of business is to adopt the agenda for today's meeting. The draft agenda of this meeting was circulated to all delegations in advance. Since the Secretariat has not received any comments on the agenda, I will assume that there are no objections to its adoption. Thank you. The agenda is adopted. We will now proceed to agenda item 2, remarks by the chair of the committee. Since Mr. Hudson was not able to join us today, he kindly asked me to share his remarks to the members of the committee. I asked the Secretariat to distribute them to the delegations, and I believe you should be able to find them in the electronic folder of a winter meeting. As Representative Hudson pointed out in his remarks, the OSCE gives us a place to use debate and dialogue to express the interests of our people, identify conflicts and commonalities, and pursue common sense approaches to achieve goals. I fully support this idea and hope that it will be a spirit of our meeting today. With this, we will proceed to the next item of our agenda. It is my presentation on preparation of a report for the upcoming annual session in Bucharest. So, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished colleagues, in 2 days we will mark the tragic milestone of a second anniversary of Russia's war aggression against Ukraine. On February 24, 2022, Vladimir Putin, assisted by his accomplice, Alexander Lukashenko, attacked their peaceful neighbor, Ukraine, in an attempt to topple Ukraine's legitimate government, to establish their puppet government there, and to change Ukraine's foreign and domestic policy course. Let me stress again, legitimate government of Ukraine, elected by Ukrainian people, something neither Russia nor Belarus do not know for more than 2 decades. The 2 last dictators in Europe made their bets for a quick and victorious war against Ukraine, a blitzkrieg, hoping that Kiev will surrender in 2-3 days, that the world will abandon Ukraine, opening the way for Putin not only to regain control over it, but also to negotiate the lifting of the sanctions imposed against them and setting the rules for the new Putin-type European security order. In fact, one could hardly call it European security order. In Putin's world, there is no security, there is no order, and there is no Europe. No international law, no justice, and no accountability. It is only about violence, both internal and external, destructions, and enormous suffering for Ukraine and its people, but also for other nations in Russia's neighborhood. As we see, Putin aims to silence the oppositions at any cost. The death of Alexei Navalny, Russia's most prominent opposition leader, only proves it. Every day we are witnessing Russians' brutality in Ukraine. From the testimonies of our Ukrainian colleagues, friends, and millions of ordinary Ukrainians who are experiencing this genocidal war by Russia on their own skin on a daily basis. we see what is in our eyes when we visit Ukraine. Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine is extremely brutal. From the first day of this war, Russian troops deliberately targeted civilians, no matter elderly or young, or even babies, men or women, residents of metropolitans or small villages. Russia's main and only objective is to kill Ukrainian people and to kill their resistance, to kill their future in a united and peaceful Europe. The magnitude of Russia's genocidal war crimes in Ukraine is so big, and the cruelty of those ordering and implementing them is so unthinkable, we will not be able to even name all of them throughout our entire meeting. The Special International Tribunal will have to look into this in every detail and to make sure that everyone responsible for Russia's crime of aggression against Ukraine and for all what war crimes committed by Russian forces do not escape accountability. From Putin, Medvedev, Shoigu, Gerasimov to all the commanders and hosts who publicly and somehow appeared with their pitiful attempts to lamely justify Russia's right to kill, rape, loot, destroy. The Middle Ages ended in the most of the places in the earth a few centuries ago. It's high time for them to also end in Russia and in Belarus. Distinguished colleagues, let us also not forget that Russia's invasion of Ukraine started much earlier, 10 years ago, with the occupation and illegal annexation of Crimea and aggression of Russia in eastern Ukraine, its Donetsk and Luhansk Oblast. Our reluctance to call a spade emboldened Russia to attack Ukraine through a large-scale war of aggression 8 years later in 2022. We must learn this lesson and not repeat the very same mistake. We must demand that Russia ceases its aggression against Ukraine, withdraw its troops from the entire territory of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders, including Crimea. However, we have to be realistic. Our calls will not stop the aggressor. No talks, no statements, no resolutions will be effective without practical steps. More weapons for Ukraine, more sanctions for Russia, better coordination is the only way to bring just peace. Hitler was not stopped by discussions in gorgeous halls. Crazy dictators are stopped only by firm and determined actions. We shall also ensure that Russia pays reparations to Ukraine and that Russia's top political and military leadership, including Vladimir Putin, are brought to justice. We must also make it clear that there is no other way towards restoration of peace in Ukraine but through Ukraine's victory. Our main task is to help Ukraine to achieve it by military, diplomatic and legal means. Distinguished colleagues, today, on the eve of the second anniversary of Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine and the 10th anniversary of Russia's invasion to Ukraine, as well as the occupation and illegal annexation of Crimea, I call us all, the OSCE family, to step up our efforts in supporting Ukraine in a number of concrete ways. Let us also call this as some kind of reality check of our organization and of our actions. Have we done everything to stop this aggression? Have all OSCE bodies and structures put maximum efforts to support Ukraine? Have we fully understood that if Putin wins, there will be no OSCE, no European structure, and no security in Europe at all for decades? First, OSCE and its principles will not be preserved if we do not defend them. Very often we complain that Russia and its accomplice Belarus violate them. But what do we do to stop them continuing this? What do we do to make them paying for this violation? What is that Russia paid for its war of aggression against Ukraine? What is that Belarus paid for its accomplice role in it? What is Russia paid for the old war crimes committed in Ukraine against its people? What is Russia paid for the illegal detention of OSCE staff members for nearly 2 years already? Second, we should never allow Ukraine to stand alone in their fight against the aggressor Russia. Regretfully, this is always the case. This is not always the case. Ukraine should never fight for our attention to Russia's war for aggression against it, Russia's terrorist attacks against Ukrainian civilians, and its genocidal war crimes against Ukrainian people. Ukrainian mission in Vienna should not be asking for the special PC meeting after yet another massive and deadly missile attack by Russia. We should be offering our support and attention whenever Ukraine needs it, and in all possible forms. Third, OSCE must step up in its engagement and presence in Ukraine significantly. Implementation of OSCE projects under the support program of Ukraine is highly welcome. However, I'll also hear that not all projects are implemented to their full extent. Some obstacles known for more than a year already are still not solved. OSCE also needs a well-established and visible presence on the ground. What is our work about and what we all about if we do not even aim at flying OSCE flag in Kiev and other Ukrainian cities? Fourth, I call OSCE chairmanship in office, OSCE Secretary General, Conflict Prevention Center, autonomous institutions, as well as OSCE Parliamentary Assembly to visit Ukraine more frequently. The current dynamics of such visits is not satisfactory. Comparing with other international organizations, institutions, and civilized countries, OSCE should not look, so to say, poorly. I would say that presidents of OSCE PA are doing their best to save the face of the organization. Fifth, application of OSCE Toolbox. In 2011, OSCE Conflict Cycle Toolbox was agreed. It is a very universal and comprehensive toolbox that had a task to ensure OSCE's active engagement in all the phases of a conflict: early warning, conflict prevention, conflict resolution, and post-conflict rehabilitation. My question is very clear. Why it is so what we are talking a lot before the war starts, but abandon it when on the very same moment it starts? Sixth, we shall be calling things their real names. Something is really difficult to understand. What do we want to say? In OSCE public statements, messages in social networks, OSCE internal meetings. It is Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. It is Russia what is the aggressor and Ukraine what is the victim. It is Russia what has to stop firing missiles at Ukrainian cities and people living there. It is Russia what has to stop any offensive and withdraw all its troops from the entire territory of Ukraine. And it is Russia that has to implement a set of preconditions before entering any peace talks. Making statements about all this and not saying Russia, asking missiles to stop falling on Ukrainian people and not saying who fired them, is not only oxymoron, it plays into the interest of the aggressor. Finally, Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine was and is and will be a litmus test for the OSCE's credibility and its viability in the future. If we really want to preserve it, we shall seek that all these points which were mentioned are urgently addressed. Continuing business as usual is not helping OSCE to survive and to be relevant, rather on the contrary. Thank you very much for your attention. Dear colleagues, traditionally our winter meeting is an opportunity for us to interact with our counterparts in the governmental side of the OSCE family, learn about their work and discuss synergies in our activities. As always, we have a great list of guest speakers representing main OSCE bodies working on political and security affairs. We will start today with Ambassador Buryan, a new chairperson of a security committee of OSCE Permanent Council and permanent representative of Slovak Republic to the OSCE. Dear Ambassador, first of all, let me congratulate you with this appointment, and I'm sure what your big professional experience will be very useful for our organization. Please, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your nice words. And it's really committing what you said. Really, I'm looking forward to our cooperation and interaction. But first of all, I wish to thank you for the invitation to address the members of the General Committee on Political Affairs and Security. And as you mentioned, the established practice to invite the chair of the Security Committee for your winter meeting contributes to strengthening our cooperation and synergies in defending the principles and commitments of the OSCE. Having said that, there cannot be a more appropriate time for our discussion than today, just 2 days before a grim anniversary. And as you mentioned, Mr. Chair, on February 24, it will be 2 years from the start of unjustified, unprovoked, brutal aggression of Russia against Ukraine, causing unspeakable suffering for the people in Ukraine. Russia, by brutally invading Ukraine, has violated all OSCE principles and commitments with wide, multifaceted security implications for the whole OSCE area and beyond. Russia's behavior continues to threaten the whole post-Second World War rules-based system, including the functioning of the OSCE. The good news is that the participating states have found a way how to keep the organization functional and hold Russia to account. I believe the strong principled approaches taken by all three CIOs since Russia started its aggression has been instrumental to that end and needs to continue until Russia halts hostilities and withdraws its forces from all illegally occupied territories of Ukraine. In this regard, I very much welcome the OSCE's Parliamentary Assembly's continued attention towards Ukraine, including the visit of Parliamentary Assembly President with the PA support team for Ukraine to Kyiv, reaffirming the PA support for Ukraine and engaging directly with members of Verkhovna Rada. I'm convinced that today's special debate on OSCE's work in Ukraine during Russia's war of aggression with Special Representative of the CIO, Ambassador Peshko, will generate many important ideas how to make this engagement even more focused and efficient, including the work of my committee under my chairmanship. I wanted to use this opportunity and thank him for his great work and relentless efforts on the ground to make the OSCE's presence in Ukraine through the support program for Ukraine well-targeted and fully operational based on strengthened national ownership of projects in all areas. But now, please, allow me a few words about the future work of the Security Committee under my chairmanship. In line with the mandate of the Security Committee, we'll use this as a platform for bringing together diverse actors from your states, from participating states, international organizations, civil society, women and youth in particular, as it was highlighted also in the program of the current CIOs. And we will try to generate ideas how to achieve ambitious objectives of the Maltese chairmanship defined by the slogan, strengthening resilience, enhancing security. On one hand, we need to find the way how to win back the respect for OSCE commitments, I believe. On the other hand, we must define the best ways and means for helping all participating states to build capacity, resilience, and skills needed to implement these commitments while benefiting from vast collective knowledge and experience, best practices, and OSCE tools, programs, and field missions. Finally, we should keep the focus on those who flagrantly violate these principles and commitments and make sure that they are held accountable. This is, in my view, the best way how to keep the OSCE relevant and able to meet expectations of our people, our citizens, and taxpayers. Now, let me briefly outline the topics and existing challenges which we want to address in the committee during the forthcoming period. First of all, the committee work should continue to be focused on the consequences of Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine and the impact on evolving transnational security threats. And indeed, this crisis is overlapping and exacerbating other security and socio-economic challenges across the OSCE area. We are witnessing weakened international cooperation and polarization of societies connected with disinformation. Transnational organized crime engages with a new vigor in illicit activities such as drug and arms trafficking, human trafficking, and smuggling, exploiting vulnerable populations. And I also want to refer to a recent negative tendency in trafficking in cultural artifacts, which has grown in connection also with the connection with the conflicts in Ukraine. And strengthening our collective capacity to understand and deal with these multiple and diverse security challenges is therefore more important than ever. OSCE must act more efficiently to counter these threats, and not only act or react, but act really proactively. Otherwise, these trends will continue to undermine stability and security of our societies and our democratic institutions. I welcome and fully share the priorities of Maltese chairpersonship, which will provide the guidance for our work and will be reflected in the agenda of the Security Committee. In particular, it will be focusing on a comprehensive approach to addressing transnational security challenges, advocating for an holistic, inclusive, people-centered and human rights-focused approach, and learning from recent conflict experiences. In this respect, we'll closely interact with the OSCE Economic and Human Dimension committees to address the cross-dimensional aspect and impact of those threats. And of course, you will hear the current chair of the FSC, many topics which are as priorities of FSC will be also reflected in our agenda. And in line with CIO's priorities, we want to have thematic debates on resilience against cyber threats, combating human trafficking related to conflict situations and organized crime activities, countering terrorism and violent extremism, efficient border management, protection of journalists in conflict zones, meaningful participation of women and girls in all aspects of the work in the security sector as an element of protection and prevention of gender-based violence, and last but not least, the nexus between security and the environment. And I also want to focus on regional cooperation as factor of security and stability, and I would like to refer to many positive developments in Central Asia, and we want to showcase some examples in this region, but also in Western Balkans, how this regional cooperation is conducive to addressing formidable challenges these regions are facing. At the same time, as it was the case during the former chairmanship of Romania, we want to keep the Security Committee agenda flexible and dynamic, reflecting new developments as they emerge. The exact focus of future Security Committee meetings will result from ongoing consultations with participating states and different branches of the Secretariat. We, of course, started a little bit late, but we'll be able to catch up, I believe. And I also consider this discussion today in this committee as part of this consultation, which could help us really to target the most important challenges based on your knowledge and close connection with the daily reality your people, your constituencies are facing. So I look forward to your suggestions and recommendations concerning the topics and trajectory of our work in these challenging circumstances. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. So we are looking forward working closely with you in the future. So we will go now to our agenda item 5, and here the presentation of the chair of OSCE Forum for Security Cooperation and permanent representative of Cyprus to OSCE, Ambassador Andreas Ignatiou, who took over the chairmanship in the beginning of the year. Ambassador, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Esteemed delegates of the Parliamentary Assembly, dear colleagues, ambassadors, Cyprus has assumed the chair of the Forum for Security and Cooperation 17 years after the previous time, with great sense of responsibility and with a strong commitment to further promote and advance the knowledge that has emerged from the previous chairs, in close cooperation with the members of the Troika, as well as the chairpersonship of the OSCE, our good partner Malta, during the first trimester of 2024. Our chairpersonship aims to bring into discussion important issues relevant to the Forum for Security and Cooperation mandate, contributing to the extended reflection in our organization. We are also fully aware that our chairpersonship coincides with an undeniable extended period of deep reflection due to Russia's unjustified war of aggression, which gravely affects the security and stability of our continent and beyond. Cyprus remains consistent with our unwavering support to Ukraine's independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity, with its internationally recognized borders, as well as Ukraine's right to defend itself against Russia's aggression. In this respect, all security dialogues remain focused on the pertinent issue. In addition, the Cyprus chairpersonship has also set gender equality as a general cross-cutting priority, and therefore, women, peace, and security agenda is incorporated in all our thematic meetings and discussions. Gender equality is a fundamental foundation for peace, security, and stability, while the effects of conflict are disproportionately impacting women and girls. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to elaborate a bit more on the individual elements of our chairpersonship program. Cyprus will overall organize 4 security dialogues during our chairpersonship on the following topics. First, humanitarian mine action, victim assistance. Second, international humanitarian law, human security in armed conflicts, protection against gender-based violence. Third, environment security, natural and man-made disasters. And fourth, women, peace and security, integrating gender perspective when fulfilling the OSCE politico-military commitments and activities. The first security dialogue took place on the 24th of January on the topic of humanitarian mine action, with a special focus on victim assistance. The aim was to raise awareness and share best practices from different stakeholders on assistance to victims of landmines and explosive remnants of war. Our speakers included representatives from the Geneva International Center for Humanitarian Demining, the Ukrainian Deminers Association, as well as the Embassy of Japan in Ukraine, as part of our efforts to also engage our partners for cooperation. Moreover, on the 7th of February, we planned a second security dialogue on the topic of human security in time of armed conflicts, focusing on the protection of civilians against gender-based violence. Unfortunately, the agenda of the FSC meeting was blocked by the Russian Federation because the chair did not accept a proposed Russian speaker. We kindly rejected the proposal as we strive to keep ownership of these decisions, also in line with the relevant rules of procedures and in line with the previous practice. We communicate this decision to the Russian Federation through a letter mentioning that the chair has chosen the speakers according to its own prerogative and priorities. As a result, Russia decided to block and obstruct the meeting. Therefore, the Cyprus chair proceeded with organizing a side event on the same topic with the support of the FSC Troika, namely Canada and Croatia. Our panel included representatives of the UN Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner, the NGO GER firm, Ukrainian Women Lawyers Association, the network WAVE, Women Against Violence Europe, and the OSCE Secretariat. The event highlighted the importance of adherence to international humanitarian law, command responsibility, and advocating for the supporting survivors and ensuring accountability for perpetrators. Along with the Maltese chair, we also organized yesterday a joint FSC-PC meeting aiming to explore the evolving role of military forces in responding to natural and man-made disasters and ways to reduce the impact of military activities, including in conflict situations, on the environment and climate change. The meeting was addressed by the Minister of Agriculture, Rural Development and Environment of Cyprus, the Minister of Environment, Energy and Enterprise of Malta, and the OSCE Secretary General. Our panel included speakers from the UNODC, the European Defence Agency, Georgian Town Institute for Women, Peace and Security, and the Federal Ministry of Defence of the Republic of Austria. Finally, a dedicated meeting on the Women, Peace and Security agenda will be organized on the 6th of March with the aim to promote the integration of gender perspective when implementing political-military commitments and to elevate gender monitoring as a yardstick for activities conducted in the political-military field of our organization. In addition, a side event will be co-organized with the Maltese chairpersonship on the 7th of March, marking the International Women's Day 2024, aiming to discuss the active contribution of men in achieving gender equality based on the motion that this is not a women issue, but a shared responsibility to overcome gender inequality. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, despite the grave challenges we are currently faced, the OSCE remains the most important regional platform for dialogue and cooperation, with its comprehensive concept on security being unique in its conception as well as in its implementation. Cyprus remains committed as the chair of the Forum for Security and Cooperation for this trimester to continue this dialogue in our efforts for mutual respect, peace, security and stability in the OSCE region and beyond. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you very much. So our next speaker is Ambassador Kairat Abdurrahmanov, OSCE High Commissioner on National Minorities. Ambassador, we are very lucky to have you as a regular guest in our parliamentary meetings. So please, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, distinguished panel, distinguished members and observers of the Parliamentary Assembly. First, I would like to thank you for your invitation to the meeting of your distinguished General Committee. Indeed, since I took up my mandate 3 years ago, I continued the tradition of addressing you during your winter session. I consider my dialogue with you, distinguished parliamentarians, to be vital for my institution's ongoing work and aim to helping your governments design inclusive policies that build cohesive, strong and resilient societies. Dear members of parliaments, dear deputies, you play a very important role in formulating, executing, and implementing legislative mechanisms within your political system that shape and affect the communities that reside within your territories, constituencies, including national minorities. I continue to emphasize to you, distinguished parliamentarians, how the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, this very much august body, played a pivotal role in convening the only OSCE summit in the 21st century in 2010, where the Astana Commemorative Declaration was signed. Your role, and some of participants with us today, was decisive in convincing your respective governments to support the initiative to convene such a summit. This means that after a bit more than 13 years ago, participating states came to a consensus and agreed to work towards reinforcing cooperation and ensuring security within the OSCE. Unfortunately, the landscape that we have right now is far from being conducive to cooperation, as the OSCE remains deeply divided. However, they say that hope dies last. Therefore, I choose to remain hopeful that there is a way to go forward. Let us do this together by placing people first and by working as the Maltese chairman of the OSCE in 2024, His Excellency Jan Borg, has highlighted, to strengthen resilience and enhance security. As you know, my mandate was established over 30 years ago to provide early warning and early action to prevent tensions involving national minority issues from developing into conflict. To achieve this, I engage in quiet diplomacy and provide tailored expertise to 57 OSCE participating states to support the efforts to develop and implement policies that facilitate the integration of their diverse societies. Indeed, in my experience and that of former High Commissioners, promoting policies and laws that facilitate integration through inclusion and respect for diversity is one of the most effective tools to prevent conflict. Taking into account that the war against Ukraine started despite all the mechanisms and instruments at the disposal of the OSCE and the international community at large, I have to admit that we have not fully realized the potential of our organization, including my institution, to prevent conflict. The lack of meaningful dialogue and trust between the OSCE participating countries determined the tragic development of events. Nevertheless, I appreciate today's dialogue on what we, as the OSCE, can do to mitigate the impact of the war, because my mandate precludes any engagement in areas of ongoing conflict. I am now focusing on the post-conflict scenario, namely how to help communities rebuild, how to assist the governments in this, and how to harvest the benefits of diverse societies. At the same time, I would like to highlight my long-standing support for Ukraine's legislative design and policy-making processes. I believe that robust legislation will strengthen the integration of Ukraine's society. This is also vital to prepare the ground for post-war rehabilitation. A balanced minority rights framework not only helps to meet the needs of minority communities, but also act as antidote to any external instrumentalization of minority issues, which in itself carries dangerous risks. Let me give you an example from my work to support the authorities and national communities in Ukraine. As part of my institution's legislative and policy support in Ukraine, I have assisted the process of developing, amending, and finalizing the law on national minorities or communities of Ukraine. The strategic importance of this piece of legislation is also linked to Ukraine's path toward a fully integrated, secure, and resilient society. I would like to note that Ukraine, despite the challenges of the past 2 years, has maintained its legislative activity. We therefore continue to be in touch with our key partners to assist them, in particular on implementation of the law on national communities or minorities and related legislation. We are also building the capacity of bodies mandated to deal with national minority issues. Ladies and gentlemen, in all of my engagement with participating states, I emphasize the need to create a conducive environment for building social cohesion through inclusive policies, so no one is left behind. This is only possible when all parties are held accountable and are responsible. I would also like to highlight and warn against the trend towards the instrumentalization and securitization of national minority issues and related policies in the OSCE regions and beyond. This sets us back. It takes away from progress that took years to build and erodes trust, not only in official state institutions, such as the ones you represent here today, but also in international organizations, including their ability and capacity to maintain global peace and security. I therefore appeal to you, dear members of the Parliamentary Assembly, to be wary of the consequences of ignoring the instrumentalization and securitization of minority issues. These include the importance of curbing inflammatory rhetoric. Hate only breeds hate. No meaningful change will ever be possible if we don't defeat the evil of that hateful rhetoric sows. Minority issues must never be instrumentalized, particularly when they concern language and education policies and participation in political, economic, and social affairs. People and communities must not be afraid to express their dissenting opinion, which may not be aligned with public sentiments. I also remain concerned to hear about individuals reporting that they feel insecure about expressing core aspects of their identity or their opinions, which may not be aligned with public sentiments. As representatives of different people and communities, you must engage in building inclusive legislative processes that bring all people together. To this end, my office stands ready to assist you. Distinguished participants, the OSCE region has a wealth of good practices and established bilateral mechanisms of dialogue, which I would be willing to bring to light and promote among other participating states. Taking this opportunity, I would like to convey my appreciation to those parliamentarians who have already met me and members of my team during my various countries' visits and study visits. Thank you for sharing your best practices with us and for openly addressing the challenges you face. I appreciate our open and honest conversations on ways to improve not only the legislative processes, but also the implementation of current legislative framework. In parallel, I continue to provide guidance to authorities through HCNM guidelines and recommendations, and I am happy to share with you that in October last year we published our 10th collection of HCNM recommendations, this time focusing on ensuring the effective participation of national minorities and in social and economic life. I would like to emphasize that although the guidelines and recommendations issued by my office are meant to serve and guide public institutions, these are not one-size-fits-all solutions. Remedies to every issue must take a holistic approach and should be contextualized. This is why I value my cooperation not only with policymakers, but also with civil society organizations and national minority representatives. To this end, I recall that the Vancouver Declaration adopted in the summer last year called for national parliaments to re-examine their procedures in close consultation with the OSCE structures to ensure the possibilities for civil society experts to provide input on draft legislation at all relevant stages. Taking this opportunity, I would like to highlight that every 2 years my institution rewards and recognizes the work of civil society organizations or individual actors that made a notable difference in promoting the issues of national minorities with a prize named after the first High Commission on National Minority, the renowned and honorable Dutch statesman Max van der Stoel. Presently, my institution is gathering nominations from OSCE participating states and field missions for the 2024 Max van der Stoel Award, and I encourage you, distinguished parliamentarians, to suggest deserving individuals and or organizations to your respective delegations to the OSCE to further present nominations to my institutions. Frankly, the issues of protecting the interests and rights of national minorities lie not only within the scope of general issues related to democracy, rule of law, and ensuring fundamental freedoms. And this is the reason of my address at this, namely, Committee on Political Affairs and Security. These issues are fundamental to global security, and we, as organization, have created a mandate to address these issues in order to prevent bloody armed conflict by establishing and adopting HCNM mandate almost 33 years ago. It's at times like this we realize the relevance of unique conflict prevention mandate of HCNM. In the current realities of wars and conflicts raging within and beyond OSCE, we recognize the value, OSCE area, we recognize the value of the mandate that we created with foresight over 3 decades ago. As I mentioned, my office published 10 recommendations since then. And through them, we attempt to connect with you and guide you, distinguished, democratically elected parliamentarians. You have diverse communities behind you, and the 10 recommendations of my office are meant to serve, inform, and guide you to build resilient, strong, and cohesive societies. And these tools are meant to equip you to manage your diverse societies. I would like to call you to use them, not in full force. In full force. Use of these tools made available to you makes your society stronger, and abuse destroys them from within. This year, the Maltese chairpersonship leads our organization with the motto of strengthening resilience, enhancing security. How do you do that? You can start with protecting and promoting the interests of your constituencies, many of whom include members of minority communities and national minorities. In this process, it's important to design inclusive legislation that doesn't serve the interests of the few, but serve and safeguard all people fully and equally. In this process, promoting tolerance and community building, refraining from inflammatory and discriminatory rhetoric, supporting pluralism of opinion, and maintaining open and honest dialogue with all sides is vital to strengthening resilience and enhancing security. As a distinguished representative and first ever appointed to this high position representing Central Asia, I can't miss an opportunity again to ask you to think also about liberalization of visa regime to provide real freedom of movement and travel for those who residing out of, in particular, of Schengen zone or other visa regimes. Myself, I providing you my own example. As a holder of diplomatic passport, I failed to visit your summer sessions in Birmingham, in Vancouver, purely because of difficulties with obtaining visas. And I'm talking about, well, quite a diplomat with some distinguished career and what ordinary people should expect and what kind of treatment they're receiving today when they apply for visas to visit Schengen or other territories. So this is my splendid chance to ask you to consider this very thoroughly. And of course, please continue to investing to economies all over the OSCE space, and in particular to Southeastern Europe, to Caucasus, as well as to Central Asia. It will help to these societies to build their resilient societies to which we aim today under the robust chairpersonship of Malta. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your presentation and for your ideas. So our next speaker is a newly appointed director of OSCE Conflict Prevention Center, Ms. Catherine Ferron. First, Madam Director, let me congratulate you on this appointment. I'm sure your extensive expertise will help us to strengthen the important work carried out by the center. I know that our International Secretariat enjoys excellent day-to-day cooperation with your office, and I hope this productive work will continue. So, Madam Director, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, parliamentarians, colleagues. Thank you for the invitation to speak at your winter session. I would like to share with you something of the breadth and depth of OSCE's work done by its 12 field operations and activities in Central Asia, Eastern Europe, South Caucasus and Southeastern Europe, and by the Secretariat's Conflict Prevention Centre and thematic departments across the OSCE area, and taking a very much whole of OSCE approach, which we see very much as including the Parliamentary Assembly, and our Secretary General is particularly keen to have us stress this and adhere to this in our everyday work. Right across the OSCE area, we work to deliver comprehensive security to the over 1 billion people who live in our area. We therefore pay attention to comprehensive security risks, be they from climate change, from human rights vulnerabilities, from the small arms and light weapons that proliferate in security vacuums, from corruption that weakens both economic and democratic resilience, or from direct or indirect conflict. Every day, around 2,500 OSCE staff are working on these issues, from Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan to Bender in the Republic of Moldova, from Samarkand in Uzbekistan to Sarajevo in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Irrespective of the particular mission mandate, all location-specific and agreed with the host authorities and, of course, the 57 participating states, there are a number of red threads that run through all of our work, reflecting the core OSCE commitments and principles. So, for example, we have media literacy projects in Tajikistan, in Ukraine, in Montenegro and in Serbia. We have SILW projects in 4 Central Asian participating states and 6 jurisdictions in Southeastern Europe, as well as in Ukraine and Moldova. We support women's economic empowerment in Tajikistan, Bosnia and Herzegovina and Armenia. We do this work right across the OSCE area together with the host governments, principally ministries of interior, of foreign affairs, of justice, of education, of environment, of defence, and agencies such as the police, border guards, but also social welfare, ombudspersons and environmental agencies. We also work with national and local civil society actors, local municipalities and local communities. Combating transnational threats is not confined to where we have field operations or field activities. For example, we work on combating human trafficking with national authorities, policymakers across the OSCE region, including in legislatures in Italy, Romania, Canada and the United Kingdom. In the Conflict Prevention Centre, we play a support role to our field missions and activities, including the support programme for Ukraine. We work closely together with the field missions in support of our 2 flagship programmes in Central Asia, the Border Management Staff College in Dushanbe and the OSCE Academy in Bishkek. In Vienna, we support the Forum for Security Cooperation with expert advisors, I hope the chairperson agrees, and provide political and coordination advice to the thematic departments. The CPC also supports the Chair in Office, the Secretary General, participating states and executive structures in the areas of early warning, early action and crisis response. We maintain an early warning focal point network which facilitates the identification of emerging tensions or conflicts and conducts crisis simulation exercises for all field operations. We maintain a rapidly deployable strategic asset reserve that enhances OSCE's ability to address crises. We manage or coordinate a number of projects that are implemented in multiple places. For example, the Regional Trial Monitoring project in Southeastern Europe. This covers 6 jurisdictions and around 300 serious corruption and organised trial cases. We coordinate the repository programme designed to respond to the implications of instability in Afghanistan, which is an envelope of some 35 projects across all 3 dimensions, mostly implemented in or for Central Asian participating states. We manage the Secretariat's support programme for Ukraine, in Ukraine, which delivers on around 20 projects in all 3 dimensions with 27 local partners in Ukraine, building democratic and social resilience in Ukraine in the long term and addressing the immediate consequences of the war in the short term. We are staunch supporters of the Women, Peace and Security and Youth, Peace and Security agendas. For example, we manage a cross-regional cross-regional youth dialogue project, which brings together young people from Central Asia and South Caucasus to learn about the OSCE and the value of multilateral diplomacy. We run the OSCE Scholarship for Peace and Security, which annually brings together around 150 young professionals and, from the OSCE region and beyond, empowering them to engage in conflict prevention and resolution. The majority of the recipients of this annual training programme are women, and they, as graduates, tell us that they stay engaged in the security sector after its completion. Importantly also, we support the formal conflict-related formats and dialogue facilitation in the field. In Moldova, we support conflict resolution efforts by the OSCE mission to Moldova and the Special Representative on the Transnistrian settlement process. In Georgia, dealing with the consequences of the 2008 armed conflict, our staff support the efforts of the Chairperson-in-Office's Special Representative in his function as co-chair of the Geneva International Discussions together with the EU and the UN, and as co-facilitator of the Incident Prevention and Response Mechanism. Within the framework of the Incident Prevention and Response Mechanism, the IPRM, CPC supports initiatives around, for example, water management between the parties. We are also closely observing the political process between Armenia and Azerbaijan and keep up a small political engagement, and many of you will have heard the Secretary-General speak this morning and the CIO about their engagement at the Munich Security Conference. Building on the decades-long experience of the OSCE in this context, we stand ready to increase our support to the sides as they strive for normalising relations and making peace, irrespective of the numerous humanitarian and other challenges on the ground. Through our mediation support team, we ensure that our staff in the field, particularly in places where conflict still frames public and political discourse, like Serbia, Bosnia, or Bosnia and Herzegovina, or Kosovo, we ensure that they continue to be trained in mediation and negotiation skills. Via the OSCE Communications Network and under the auspices of measures such as the Open Skies Treaty, the Vienna Document and Dayton Article 4, the CPC facilitates the secure exchange of diplomatic notification around military information. And complementing our existing work in southeastern Europe, this year we will also work on reducing the risks of illicit trafficking and uncontrolled spread of small arms and light weapons and explosives to and from Central Asia, stemming from the instability in Afghanistan. Such illicit trafficking could undermine the safety, security and stability of societies not only in the region but beyond. To this end, we will implement 7 projects in close cooperation with the border security management and customs authorities, as well as the respective ministries of defence of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. In Eastern Europe, we continue to support Ukraine's national authorities in strengthening the country's biosafety and biosecurity. Recently, for example, we ran with our Ukrainian counterparts a training of trainers course for laboratory personnel dealing with hazardous biological materials to enable them to deliver to other scientists a special OSCE-developed training course on biosafety and biosecurity. Regional cooperation initiatives remain key platforms for dialogue, which the OSCE is very supportive of. For instance, we're proud of the role we played together with the UN in making a success of the regional housing programme in southeastern Europe, which came to an end in November last year after 11 years of operation. It saw almost 36,000 of the region's most vulnerable displaced persons finally find durable housing. But as our Secretary-General stated at the closing conference last year, this was never just about houses and apartments, but about people who can finally call these buildings homes. The OSCE field missions in 3 of the 4 partner countries, the missions to Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro and Serbia, played a central role in the programme. Collaborating closely with their strategic partner, the UNHCR, they supported the selection process, ensuring that only the most vulnerable were selected and that the sustainability of the provided solutions was guaranteed. As part of the OSCE's broad support for the regional housing programme since the beginning, the Conflict Prevention Centre assumed an overall coordination role in that process. And in the end, the regional housing programme not only helped resolve displacement issues, but also enhanced good neighbourly relations, built confidence and fostered security and stability in the region, all key elements of the OSCE's long-standing engagement in southeastern Europe. In closing, I am proud to be able to shed some light on the extensive and impactful work carried out by the OSCE across its diverse mandate areas, both centrally and in the field. From promoting comprehensive security to fostering dialogue, cooperation and conflict resolution, the OSCE remains steadfast in its commitment to ensuring the safety, stability and well-being of the over 1 billion people across its vast area of operation that you know better than anyone stretches from Vancouver to Vladivostok. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Director, and thank you for your overview and for your efforts. So now we are moving, dear colleagues, to our special debate session, which will be focused on the work the OSCE is doing in Ukraine during the Russian war of aggression. From all presentations we heard today, Ukraine remains a top priority of the work of OSCE. So over 2 decades, the project coordinator in Ukraine has done essential and extraordinary work in all 3 OSCE dimensions. When 2 years ago, Russia has started its unjustifiable and unprovoked war of aggression and then blocked the renewal of a mandate of a project coordinator, the organization launched the OSCE support program for Ukraine. To introduce our discussion on how OSCE can address the immediate challenges to civilians posed by the war and to support the long-term democratic and social resilience of its institutions and civil society, we have Ambassador Marcel Peshko, Special Representative of the Chairman in Office, Project Coordinator in Ukraine, who is connected to our meeting from Kyiv. Ambassador Peshko, let me thank you for the great work what you and your brave colleagues are carrying out on a daily basis in Ukraine. I would like also to express our highest appreciation for cooperation our Assembly had with your office, in particular during the most recent visits of the OSCE PA Parliamentary Support Team on Ukraine to Kyiv. So, Ambassador, Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Best regards from Kyiv. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share with you, with the parliamentarians. I hope that you can hear me. So thank you for the opportunity to share with you and with the members of the parliament a few remarks about the work of the OSCE today in Ukraine. I apologize in advance. I will not be able to stay too long as I was invited to a meeting with President Zelensky, which will start in 1 hour. So please apologies for not being able to take full part in the special debate. Just few messages from my side. We are commemorating 2 years since the aggression of Russia was launched, full-fledged aggression was in Russia was launched against Ukraine. And it was said by you and others how important is to maintain the OSCE commitments and values, and the OSCE's role for supporting and promoting security in Europe. And I think 2 years since this beginning of this aggression and the horrific consequences it has, I think it's a good time and right time to do some review, to reassess and to see what we were doing right and perhaps what we could be improved. I would stress that continued presence of the OSCE in Ukraine through this extra budgetary support program for Ukraine and through my presence is both sending a strong political message in support of Ukraine and also represents a practical mechanism enabling OSCE to provide assistance to Ukraine and its people in the face of aggression. Despite the forced closure of the special monitoring mission and then the office of the project coordinator in 2022, OSCE was able to find a way and to use its tools and its creativity, I would say, and institutional ability to ensure that we can continue supporting Ukraine through also donors' efforts and presence of experts on the ground. And I think the support of now 35 participating states and the European Union, who have so far pledged around 60% of the planned budget of the SPU, it means more than 17 million out of 28.7 million, clearly demonstrates growing support and recognition of the work of the support program for Ukraine here in Ukraine, and added value of our work here for Ukraine and for OSCE at large. Thanks to the support of the donors, the majority of participating states, now we can implement more than 20 projects in all three security dimensions, focusing on strengthening resilience of the country, of the population, and enhancing the capacity for stronger and more democratic institutions here in Ukraine. So we are applying a comprehensive approach, inclusive approach, covering topics from the fundamentals of cybercrime investigation and combating trafficking in human beings, through effectively handling calls from children reporting gender-biased violence, to a role of judiciary in protection of human rights in time of war, to chemical and radiological governance response. So you can see that the work of OSCE today is quite comprehensive, stretching from democratization, good governance, support for media pluralism, reform of justice system, rule of law and human rights, countering corruption, money laundering, justice reform. But what is important that we are focusing on strengthening the resilience of Ukrainian institutions and population in the face of war. And there are projects on addressing the issues of psychological and social support to people and the children affected by the war, protection of IDPs from the risk of illegal trafficking of human beings, cyber resilience, environmental security, and so forth. Let me just mention a few accomplishments, what we have achieved last year through our work. For instance, we were able to provide a tool for Kakhovka dam breach water and air analysis. We have been contributing to strengthening of the coordination mechanism in Ukraine when it comes to humanitarian mine action and developing international standards in that area. We have been able to support the strengthening of capacity of Ukrainian authorities to monitor and counter the financial risk assessment. In politico-military area, we supported the strengthening of capacities when it comes to chemical security risk education. We have provided recommendations how to deal the relationship between armed forces and media, and of course, gender mainstreaming through all our projects. So I would say today OSCE in Ukraine is visible, it works. However, there is much more space for our work. I have seen here the increased demands for support in many areas where I think using our expertise and tools, OSCE can be even more supportive. What is important is that we would apply the principles focusing on strengthening the resilience of Ukrainian institutions and helping Ukraine to cope with the consequence of the war, providing direct support to Ukrainian population facing the consequences of the war, contribute to the structural changes and capacity building for the implementation of reforms, including also now reforms related to meeting the criteria of the joining of the European Union, that we are able to continue to deliver on the ground, that we apply innovative approaches, and of course, that we work in partnership with other international actors here such as EU assistance missions or UN, UNDP, Council of Europe, and so forth. I would also highlight the continued need for funding of our work. Everything we do here is based on voluntary contributions. And of course, we need to look forward to until 2025, until when this support program for Ukraine was budgeted and beyond. And therefore, your support, the support of national parliaments in continuous funding of our operations in Ukraine, of course, would make a great difference. You, Chair, also mentioned that we continue to face some challenges. Yes, I confirm that we still need to address the issue of the legal status of the OSCE in Ukraine in this new situation. And here, of course, the political support with engaging with our Ukrainian partners, engaging with all actors to address the issues of, let's say, project registration is very helpful. And here, the recent visit of the President Piakuma and other MPs was very helpful. I see here also a very committed approach by our Ukrainian partners to address these issues jointly. How I see our objectives for the work here in Ukraine. Of course, it's first of all to focus on enhancement of our programmatic support to Ukrainians during the wartime, to demonstrate the ability to respond to the changing needs of Ukraine and Ukrainians, and respond to new opportunities, such as this invitation to start accession talks for Ukraine, but also to lay down grounds for the OSCE's engagement in the post-war period. And I think that's also important that we have this discussion, what the OSCE's role should be there when hopefully the diplomacy kicks in. There is a big discussion now about the greater OSCE engagement in the area of illegally detained civilians and including children. And I think this should be also debated within the PA, as I see a huge challenge here, at the same time, a huge role for the OSCE and particularly parliamentarians in this area. So what we can do in the area of this issue of illegally deported persons and detained persons, and of course children, I would see OSCE as a platform for facilitating international awareness raising of this grave issue. I would also see OSCE as a platform for facilitating joint efforts and cooperation between Ukraine and international community to address these issues. I would also see OSCE initiate meetings with the mediating states and facilitating humanitarian corridors, for instance. We can also see how we can support Ukraine in tracking locations and movements of missing individuals. And this is one of the areas where now, through the projects, we are trying to develop this assistance in the future. We can also look how we can support the Ombudsman for Human Rights here in Ukraine and the activities of the Child Rights Protection Center. So I just highlighted this one big issue as perhaps inviting you to discuss how the OSCE could be even more supportive in this area. Finally, I would like to stress that contribution of the OSCE PA with respect of the OSCE's engagement in Ukraine has a unique value in addition to other activities of decision-making bodies or institutions or OSCE's tools like Moscow mechanism. And definitely, I would like to see a greater political engagement and a practical engagement of parliamentarians in our work in Ukraine. You have a strong role when it comes to strengthening the accountability and holding Russia and the perpetrators of war crimes accountable. I think here strengthening or creating more space for the discussion and engagement would make the same sense. And at the same time, mobilization of continued support of international community to Ukraine, particularly now when we seeing a waning sort of interest also fanned by the Russian propaganda in our own countries. Finally, I would like to thank for the recent visit of President Madam Pia Kuma here in Kiev. I think it reinforced the strong message of support and solidarity and the readiness to further intensify OSCE's engagement in Ukraine. And also it reinforced the message given a few days before that by Chair in Office, Minister Jan Borg, who also visited Kiev, and both of them strongly emphasized that Ukraine continues to be a top priority for the OSCE, top priority for the OSCE chairmanship. And I hope that also through our work here, we will be able to demonstrate it through our practical support to our Ukrainian friends and colleagues. And I'm very much looking forward to continued cooperation and seeking synergies between our work here in Ukraine and supporting the activities of the Parliamentary Assembly when it comes to Ukraine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. So best wishes to you and many applause for you in our hall. So now, ladies and gentlemen, we are moving to open debate. We have 29 members of the committee who asked to speak. So as I said before, we're limiting to 2 minutes the intervention. So let's start. Joe Wilson, United States of America, to be followed by Heidi Fry, Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and ladies and gentlemen, friends of democracy and freedom, particularly along with my good time and longtime friend, Ambassador Peter Burian of Slovakia. 2 years ago, on February 24th, war criminal Putin with dictator Lukashenko of Belarus launched a murderous invasion of the people of Ukraine. This week, Putin, on February 16th, assassinated Alexei Navalny, revealing that the people of Russia are under oppression, and now Putin's murderers continue for personal power to oppress the people of Russia and Ukraine. For nearly 50 years, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe has existed to offer a means to address and discuss national security, economic, and human rights issues. In the face of inhumanity, it's inspiring to see the civilized world has come together to promote further mutual trust and continue transparency to end atrocities. We gather here in Vienna, the location of so many historic diplomatic conferences, to listen, understand, and amplify with over 50 nations united to hold Russia and Belarus accountable for war crimes and crimes against humanity. Last year, Russia suspended payment of the membership dues to OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. Additionally, Putin's puppets in the Duma and State Federation of Federal Council will now suspend the participation in the Parliamentary Assembly. This is a sign of weakness and contempt to avoid being confronted with the truth of the atrocities being committed in their name. As we begin the third year of the murderous invasion, it's inspiring to support the people to promote victory for Ukraine. It is upholding the international order and the principles that bring together civilized societies. Kidnapping of children, as Hitler did in Poland, should not be replicated by Putin as he kidnaps children in Ukraine and murders POWs this weekend. We stand together with the people of Ukraine in the conflict we did not choose of dictators with the gun invading democracies with rule of law. I yield back.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, Hedi Fry, Canada, followed by Sarkis Khandanyan from Armenia.
Thank you very much, Chair, delegates, friends, and distinguished panelists. I am pleased that this is a discussion we're having here. It means that the concept of what is happening in Ukraine has not been forgotten by the OSCE EPA, because it cannot be forgotten. This is a priority issue for Canada. We believe that the war in Ukraine is our war, everyone's war within the region. Because if Russia can carry on with impunity, then all of those who value sovereignty, our integrity, safety, and security of our borders are at risk. So this is something we must not let go of. We have to be here for the long haul. And after 2 years, it's easy to walk away and say, we're tired of this. So let us not allow ourselves to do that. I want to say that Canada has been committed to Ukraine. We say so every time. We provided $9.6 billion to Ukrainians in terms of training of their armed forces, in terms of military aid, in terms of humanitarian aid and economic aid. And I think it's really important for us to make sure that Ukraine becomes a sustainable place so people to continue to live. I just wanted to say that our Foreign Affairs Minister a few weeks ago went to Kyiv, and she actually started the International Coalition for the Returning of Ukrainian Children. And I think it's thank you, all of you who joined that coalition, because we cannot allow Russia to continue to defy all of these human rights, and especially the rights of children. And so I want to say we need to continue to look at Russia's disinformation and fight it. We need to look at the mental health of the people in Ukraine who continue to suffer so constantly, at the information integrity and security that we need to keep there. We need to look at the international humanitarian problems of the war and Russia's crimes against humanity. And we need more than ever to look at the rights of women in sexual and reproductive health. I also wanted to say, because I would be remiss if I didn't, being the gender representative, that, you know, women, peace and security, 20 years ago, 1325, was a resolution of the United Nations. We still have not achieved women, peace and security. Canada is helping to fund it and to give aid, but it's something that we still have not achieved. And so I finally want to say, we have to be there, if I'm going to repeat it, for the long haul. We must be there. It is our job as the OSCE. That's what the OSCE was created for, to continue to seek peace in the region, the security of the region, dialogue, human rights, and a democracy. And that's why we have to stay the course on this one. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Just big request to stick to the time. But, you know, let's continue. So, Sarkis Khandanyan from Armenia, followed by Salami Altinok from Turkey. Please.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, you presented your vision for the draft report of this committee. Of course, we will have time and opportunity before our Bucharest annual session to contribute to this report and draft resolution, but I would like to emphasize the importance of inclusion in the text of the principles for the settlement of the relations between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Those principles are the following. Armenia and Azerbaijan have agreed to recognize each other's territorial integrity based on the 1991 Almaty Declaration. Two countries have agreed to conduct the delimitation process between two countries on the political basis of the same Almaty Declaration. And two countries have agreed to unblock transport and economic links based on respect for the sovereignty and jurisdiction of either country on the basis of reciprocity and equality. The above-mentioned principles have been agreed and reconfirmed between the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan in Prague in 2022, in Brussels last year, and in Munich a few days ago. After those meetings, Armenia, in the highest level, reconfirmed its commitments to those fundamental points for the normalization of relations as soon as possible. It is very important, dear colleagues, to continue to call Azerbaijan to strongly adhere to these principles and to engage in the peace process based on these understandings without further delays and demands, including territorial claims towards Armenia. The adherence to the principles of Almaty Declaration has a paramount importance for this process. 12 Soviet republics, by joining this declaration and becoming sovereign states, recognized each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty. And thus, with the Almaty Declaration, the existing administrative borders between the Soviet republics became state borders. This principle is not only actual for the context of the relations between Armenia and Azerbaijan, but it is also fundamental for the respect of the other post-Soviet republics' territorial integrity, including Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova. Thank you.
Thank you. So now the floor is for Salami Altinok from Turkey, followed by Veronica Rosca from Moldova. Please.
Değil mi? Evet, Sayın Başkan, değerli üyeler, hepinizi saygıyla selamlıyorum. özellikle Rusya-Ukrayna arasındaki savaş noktasında gelinen durumun vahametini özellikle biz Türkiye olarak da paylaşıyoruz. Pozisyonumuzu koruyoruz. Rusya'nın Ukrayna'ya olan saldırısını şiddetle kınıyoruz. 2014'ten beri işgal ettiği yerleri kesinlikle tanımıyoruz. Onu özellikle belirtmek istiyorum. Diğer yandan Azerbaycan-Ermenistan noktasındaki görüşmelerin olumlu seyrini destekliyoruz. Üçüncü tarafların bu konuda kolaylaştırıcı ve olumlu bakmasını ve kaşıyıcı bir tavır, olumsuz bir tavır sergilememesini, olayları kolaylaştırıcı bir tavrın içerisinde olmalarının çok önemli olduğunu düşünüyoruz. Diğer yandan özellikle Gazze'de bir vahşet devam ediyor. Gazze'de bir soykırım devam ediyor. 7 Ekim'deki Hamas'ın terörist saldırısını biz de Türkiye olarak kesinlikle kabul etmiyoruz. Ancak İsrail'in bir soykırım amacıyla 30 bine yakın insanı 2 aydır bütün dünyanın gözü önünde katletmesinin de özellikle özgür dünya açısından, demokratik dünya açısından çok gerçekçi olmadığını, buradaki bütün katılımcıların, bu dünyayı, demokratik dünyayı yaşayan bütün katılımcıların 11 binin üzerinde çocuğun, 7 binin üzerinde kadının, toplamda 29.410 insanın İsrail'in acımasızca soykırım derecesindeki saldırılarıyla öldüğünün de farkına varmalarının çok önemli olduğunu düşünüyoruz. Sadece burada Hamas'ın yaptığı saldırıyı ve aldığı esirleri eleştirmemiz yetmez. Onları bahane ederek İsrail'in Gazze'de bütün Filistinlilere karşı ölümcül bir saldırıyı bütün dünyanın gözü önünde devam ettirmesini kınamamız lazım gelir, engellememiz lazım gelir. Özgür dünyanın bu konudaki tavrının çok önemli olduğunu düşünüyorum.
Thank you. So now Veronica Roska from Moldova, followed by Azay Guliyev from Azerbaijan. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dear colleagues, Russia has been bombing with bestiality and attacking daily the Ukrainian cities for 2 years now, destroying infrastructure and bringing death to the homes of peaceful and innocent people. This brutal and aggressive war has caused major changes in the international politics, calling into question the fundamental values and principles embraced by the free world. Today, more than ever, the unity of the countries supporting the democratic world order must be preserved at all costs, and the support for Ukraine must be continuously increased. The war must end. The war must end because no adult and no child deserve to feel the fear of losing their life. Moldova felt the impact of the war very well from the very first day. In addition to large flows of refugees, the disruption of energy supply and the socio-economic consequences of war, our country continues to be the target of dirty hybrid war and face security threats on a daily basis. From the beginning of the Russian invasion against Ukraine, several fragments of missiles fell on the territory of Moldova and the localities in the north and south of the country, located at the border with Ukraine. Recently, the fragments of Shahed drone were found near the village of Etulia from Vulcanesh district. The proximity of war frightens us, yes, but also gives us strength. That is why we managed to keep the situation calm. We accelerated reforms and strengthened the country's overall resilience. This means that Moldova is no longer reliant on Russian gas, but has diversified its energy resources and backup storage. We have connected to the European power grid and are building power lines to Europe. In this difficult period, Moldova has clearly expressed its choice for the European future. We focused our effort on turning challenges into opportunities and getting closer to the European Union. The decision of the European Council in December to launch accession negotiations with Moldova is a result of joint efforts and hard work. You are working hard on the implementation of the outstanding elements of those three recommendations of the European Commission: justice reform, corruption fighting, and the oligarchization. Step by step, you are making progress on each recommendation and greatly appreciate the support of European member states in this regard. At the same time, Moldova is fully engaged in the Ukraine's recovery process by ensuring border security, maintaining stability in the Transnistrian region, ensuring solidarity lanes for Ukraine, receiving a large number of Ukrainian refugees and providing the necessary living conditions for them. Moldova is prepared to contribute to the implementation of the peace formula proposed by President Zelensky. The Ukrainian people is fighting for freedom and needs a strong support from all of us. It is important to further support Ukraine because only together we shall succeed. Thank you and thanks for your support. Thanks.
Thank you very much. But Veronica, we are very much asking for sticking to the time because, everybody can start to talk about 3.5 minutes. So please, asking very, with very warm wishes, of course. Azai Guliyev, Azerbaijan, and followed by Ville Kaunisto from Finland, please.
Thank you, dear Chair. Despite the declarations by Armenia and also by the delegation of Armenia on the respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Azerbaijan, unfortunately, the words of this country are not translated into real actions. Hence, there are serious obstacles created by Armenia which still continue to hold the peace treaty as hostage, which need to be immediately addressed. Dear colleagues, let me bring some concrete examples to prove what I exactly mean. First, Armenian legislation still contains territorial claim, as Declaration of Independence of 1990 and Constitution of Armenia have a provision about the unification of Armenia with Nagorno-Karabakh at that time, which is an integral part of Azerbaijan. So such position being an integral part of Armenian legislation, in effect, as a territorial claim against Azerbaijan, which cannot be overlooked. Talking about the Almaty Declaration, yes, it was agreed upon to take as a basic document for recognition of each other's territorial integrity, but we see in practice something different as Armenian delegation or Armenian officials, while officially applying to international judicial bodies, unambiguously stated that it doesn't accept the idea of Almaty Declaration transforming the former Soviet administrative boundaries into the borders of the newly established states, and thereby challenges that the fact that the former Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Oblast is a territory of the Republic of Azerbaijan. Third, Armenia evades the issue of return of 4 border and the 4 enclave occupied villages of Azerbaijan and tries to link it with various irrelevant issues. Fourth, Armenia is refusing to comply with its obligation that it undertook under the 10 November 2020 trilateral statement to provide Azerbaijan an unimpeded access connecting western region of Azerbaijan with its Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic. Azerbaijan's demand to implement undertaking commitments has nothing to do with extraterritoriality for this road through Armenia. It is a matter of security and smooth passage from part of our country to another, which is imperative given the case-long enmity in Armenia towards Azerbaijan is necessitating enhanced safeguard. Dear colleagues, this is a very clear position of Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan has never put any conditions, any demands concerning the territorial integrity of Armenia. We respect Armenian territorial integrity. The thing is that being put forward here is not true, and it is ungrounded accusation. We should reject it absolutely. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Now, Ville Kaunisto from Finland, followed by Nikolos Samharadze from Georgia. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today, hundreds of parliamentarians have gathered here in Vienna to discuss important matters like OSCE's role in Ukraine. And it was important to hear about the ongoing fieldwork directly from Kiev. I support many of the ideas and opinions that we have heard today here. At the same time, it is important to remember maybe the biggest obstacle in front of us towards peace and prosperous and independent Ukraine. It is our support to Ukraine, weapons and money. Ukraine needs more and faster. We as a collective are giving less and slower. We have had our time to ponder. The war has lasted for 10 years. We should put our money where our mouth is. Dear colleagues, hope is not a strategy, but hope is needed. Action and stronger support is the foundation of hope. Every step we take backwards, Russia takes forward. If we don't do more, we are destroying OSCE's possibilities to do its own share, and eventually we put a question mark over this important organization. Finland, as the next chair country, believes strongly in OSCE's possibilities in being the platform of building peace, prosperous cooperation, and restoring faith to the future. To execute this idea, it is Ukraine's decision how and when lasting peace can be built. But again, hope is not a strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, floor is for Nicolas Shamharadze from Georgia and followed by Michal Kobosko from Poland. Please.
Thank you, Chair. 2 years ago this week, Russia started another aggression against an OSCE member state. And up until now, unfortunately, even though we all stand in solidarity with Ukraine, we all as an international society provide Ukraine with arms, with humanitarian assistance, with financial assistance and moral assistance. Unfortunately, we are not able to stop killings of innocent civilians and bombing of Ukrainian cities. So I believe for this organization that was created in order to prevent conflicts in Europe, we need to revisit our strategy and we need to be more united in condemning the acts of aggression. I say this coming from a country that has been suffering Russia's open and clandestine occupation for the last 30 years. First 15 years this was a covert occupation. Now the last 15 years this is an open occupation. And unfortunately, I'm thankful to the presenters about the role of the OSCE that the organization is playing in conflict resolution process. But unfortunately, we do not see any tangible results. We, in the occupied regions of Georgia, the citizens are still discriminated. Children cannot go to schools to be able to be taught in their native language, and we see increasingly the steps towards incorporation of the occupied regions into Russian sphere. So, unfortunately, as the 50th anniversary of the Helsinki Final Act is approaching, we need to rethink and we need to adapt to new realities and to make OSCE organization a stronger organization to be able to prevent further aggression of any member state towards the other member state. Thank you.
Thank you. Now floor is for Michal Kobosko from Poland and followed by Michael Creed from Ireland. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here for the very first time joining the OSCE Assembly. As a member of the newly elected democratic and pro-European majority in Poland, we, Poland, stand and will stand for as long as it takes together with Ukraine. We did a lot, citizens of Poland, to help our Ukrainian friends and neighbors. We invited millions of Ukrainian refugees to the country. Our help to our military aid to Ukraine already exceeded 3.3 billion euro and will grow even further. The recent events, the withdrawal of Ukrainian forces from Avdiivka, as well as the murder of Alexei Navalny, should open eyes to all those who were or are still blind. There is little hope after these recent events. Those who were blind should finally understand that Putin is not aiming to stop in Ukraine. If we do not stop him, he will not stop there. And the war and the risk of war is coming to Europe for the very first time since decades. This is why we urge all democratic communities, countries, societies, nations to do as much as they can to sustain the aid to Ukraine, the military, humanitarian, financial aid, because the time to act is now. And we urge all sides, both sides of the Atlantic and our community to keep helping Ukraine. Again, the time to act is now, because Putin will not stop there, and this is the very serious risk for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. And the floor now is for Michael Creed from Ireland, followed by Andrei Savigny from Belarus.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and could I compliment you for the assembled panel and thank them for their contributions, which were most insightful and informative. Could I preface my remarks by saying that, of course, I and Ireland stands with Ukraine in terms of the unjust war. We support Ukraine's sovereignty and their territorial integrity, and we do so in practical ways in terms of financial support and indeed accommodation for near on 100,000 Ukrainians who are now living in Ireland since the commencement of the war 2 years ago. And I suppose we gather here today in the context of Ukraine. We commit, and I know my colleagues in the Irish Parliamentary Delegation commit to working in every way possible to secure the release of OSCE staff who were held in the Russian-controlled territories in Ukraine. And I think that's a cloud that covers this assembly today as we gather. I wish to ask the question of us as parliamentarians, for whom debate and dialogue are the tools of our trade. Have we in some ways, unwittingly or otherwise, sidelined ourselves from any meaningful role as parliamentarians in the context of engineering a resolution to this and problem in the Ukraine in particular? If not debate with Duma parliamentarians, and I understand how frustrating that was for us, 2 years ago when the war broke out, and indeed since, but not now. Is there a role for us as parliamentarians in terms of engaging with other neighbouring democracies and parliamentarians, particularly where there's clear evidence either by acts of omission or commission in terms of assisting sanction busting, which I think is enabling Russia to continue fight a war that all of us wish to bring to an end as quickly as possible? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So now is floors for Andrei Savigny from Belarus, followed by Mikita Poturaev from Ukraine.
Благодарю вас. Уважаемые участники заседания, сегодня мы вынуждены констатировать, что региональная архитектура безопасности в Европе, которая с большим трудом формировалась десятилетиями, рушится на наших глазах. Ушел в прошлое режим контроля над обычными вооружениями, парализованы механизмы укрепления доверия, не работают переговорные форматы. Постыдная практика психологических манипуляций, истерических и напыщенных, а также клеветнических заявлений, которые мы видим со стороны представителей стран коллективного Запада, ведет только к углублению разделительных линий. В основе этих порочных практик лежит бездумное и деструктивное продвижение НАТО-центричной безопасности для избранных стран, ложная уверенность в способности обеспечить собственную безопасность в ущерб другим странам-соседям. Слепая уверенность, что в логике игры с нулевой суммой через давление, санкции и дезинформацию можно добиться любых политических целей. Уверяю вас, что это не так. У нас вызывает огромное сожаление, что простые граждане в странах Запада становятся заложниками безответственной политики их собственных политических элит. Сегодня эти люди дезинформированы и бесправны, но наблюдая за трансформацией политической жизни в ЕС и США, я уверен, что голос разума и здравого смысла восторжествует. Когда это произойдет, всем политическим силам будет нужно сесть за стол переговоров и на прозрачных, честных и равноправных принципах воссоздать механизмы безопасности в Европе. Внешняя политика Белоруссии основана на добрососедстве, уставе ООН и принципах международного права. Мы к таким переговорам готовы уже сегодня. Мы пока не видим такой готовности от наших западных соседей. Но хочу выразить уверенность. Это единственно возможный путь, как кому бы то ни хотелось обманом сохранить свои несправедливые привилегии.
Thank you. So now Mikita Poturaev, Ukraine, followed by Dan Barna from Romania, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I prepared some theses for this meeting, but it was before Alexei Navalny was killed in Gulag. By the way, keeping in mind that Belarus always is mocking Russia, I wonder if they already has decided when are they going to start to kill their leaders of opposition. Let's keep an eye on what is happening in Belarus, where thousands of people are still in prison for their political position. So let's keep an eye what is going there in their prisons. You know, I think that February is a special month for Putin, because in February, invasion in Ukraine started with the invasion in Crimea. In February, Boris Nemtsov was killed. Let's not forget about it. And in February, Alexei Navalny was killed. And in February, Russian troops most of all received an order from Putin and his generals in order to execute Ukrainian soldiers, mostly wounded, that captured. You know, Alexei Navalny was fighting for non-corrupted, successful Russia. We in Ukraine mostly now want to see Russia corrupted, weak, and failed state. But there was one thing common between Alexei Navalny, who was killed in Gulag, and our soldiers who were executed. They fought for freedom. Ukrainians fought for freedom for Ukraine, and Navalny and Nemtsov were fighting for freedom for Russia. And all of them were fighting for freedom for all people. Oh, before 2014, I'm concluding, before 2014, now the price for our mistakes were mostly money. Now, let's not forget for any second that the price for a late decision, for wrong decision, for weak decision, for every such decision, the price for such decisions is life. Life of Ukrainian who killed in front, or civilian Ukrainian, or life of leaders, or just members of opposition in Russia and Belarus. So the price for wrong decisions is life. Let's not forget about it.
Thank you, Mikita. Now, floor is for Dan Barna, Romania, followed by Daniel De Ridder from Germany.
Dear colleagues, continuous deliberate attacks on civilian infrastructure and killing of innocent civilians by the Russian Federation are appalling. They constitute blatant violations of international humanitarian law and must stop immediately. We are determined to make those responsible for all of the heinous crimes committed in Ukraine accountable for their acts. Romania is joining all efforts in the international community in holding those responsible accountable, including within the OSCE by joining the participating states that have been invoking the Moscow mechanism. The consequences of Russia's war against Ukraine should continue to feature prominently on the OSCE agenda. The organization has continued to provide valuable support to Ukraine through the support program for Ukraine and the special representative, as well as through the work of autonomous institutions, ODIHR, and representative of freedom of media, which with its watchdog function, continuing monitoring the media freedom and safety of journalists on the ground. We will continue to provide all relevant support to the Republic of Moldova to strengthen its resilience in face of destabilizing activities by external actors and to support its European accession path. Romania firmly supports a comprehensive, peaceful and sustainable settlement of the conflicts in the Republic of Moldova based on the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the country within its international recognized borders and without affecting its European path. We reiterate the importance of withdrawing Russian troops and ammunition from the territory of Republic of Moldova in accordance with international law and the OSCE commitments. The Parliamentary Assembly should continue keeping a focus on all existing conflicts and tensions in the Black Sea and eastern part of the Europe region. Thank you.
Thank you. The floor now is for Daniela de Ridder from Germany, followed by Fernand Kartheiser from Luxembourg.
Vielen Dank, Herr Vorsitzender. Fast auf den Tag genau jährt sich der Beginn der russischen Invasion in der Ukraine. Letzten Herbst habe ich mir in Kiew, Butscha und Irpin ein Bild verschafft. Die persönlichen Erfahrungen, Begegnungen und Gespräche haben mich zutiefst erschüttert. Für die Ukrainerinnen heißt Krieg täglich aufs Neue Furcht vor russischen Angriffen, Angst um das eigene Leben, Sorge und Trauer um die Liebsten, Kindesentführung, Vergewaltigung und Folter, aber auch hybride Kriegsführung und Destabilisierung anderer Staaten. Russland will mit seinem brutalen Angriffskrieg die Ukraine als Staat und die UkrainerInnen als Nation auslöschen. Wir werden diesem Völkermord in dem OSZE-Raum nicht tatenlos zusehen. Und deshalb appelliere ich an uns alle, insbesondere auch an unsere republikanischen Freunde in den USA, mit der Solidarität, mit der finanziellen und militärischen Unterstützung nicht nachzulassen. Wie brutal das Putin-Regime vorgeht, können wir am Umgang mit der Zivilgesellschaft und vor allem daran erkennen, wie mit politischen Häftlingen umgegangen wird. Beispielhaft dafür steht in der Tat der Tod Alexei Nawalnys. Die Tötung von Oppositionellen ist Teil des Oppressionssystems in Russland. Aber sogar als Toter macht Nawalny dem Regime noch Angst. Wie sonst ist es zu erklären, dass nicht einmal sein Leichnam freigegeben wird? Von unserer Konferenz, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, muss ein Signal ausgehen, alle politischen Häftlinge freizulassen. In Russland, in Belarus und weltweit. Insbesondere gilt dies auch für Journalistinnen und Journalisten. Und wir müssen heute und hier fordern, dass Wladimir Kara-Murza freigesetzt wird, dass er freikommt. Sonst ist er der Nächste, dessen Tod wir zu beklagen haben. Und vergessen wir bitte auch nicht Maria Kolesnikova. Auch sie wartet darauf, befreit zu werden. Vielen Dank für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit.
Thank you so much, Daniela. And now the floor is for Fernand Kartheiser from Luxembourg and followed by Skaidrite Abrama from Latvia. Please.
Monsieur le Président, l'OSCE a une particularité qui rehausse encore son importance, surtout dans les circonstances actuelles. Il s'agit de la seule organisation pan-européenne qui nous permet encore d'échanger nos idées avec la Fédération de Russie. Nous nous rappelons les succès du sommet d'Istanbul en 1999 et du sommet d'Astana en 2010, où nous avions trouvé un accord avec la Russie sur la sécurité européenne. Nous avions compris à l'époque que cette sécurité est indivisible, mais hélas, la compréhension de cette vérité fondamentale semble souvent défaillante à l'heure actuelle. Il faut que l'OSCE mérite la pleine confiance de tous ses États participants. Ainsi, l'OSCE pourra redevenir ce qu'elle doit être, non pas un lieu d'exclusion ou une tribune pour mettre au pilori tel ou tel État, mais un forum servant à renouer des liens rompus, à favoriser la négociation et à soutenir des efforts de paix par un dialogue honnête. Dès lors, le retrait momentané de la Fédération de Russie de cette assemblée parlementaire est regrettable et j'espère qu'elle reviendra bientôt y occuper sa place légitime. L'OSCE doit se défaire de sa robe de procureur pour redécouvrir la première et la plus noble de ses missions, celle de servir la paix. En se basant sur les succès qu'elle a connus, notre organisation pourra s'investir dans la reconstruction de cette architecture européenne de sécurité dont nos peuples ont besoin. Un premier pas serait que tous les pays représentés ici, y compris les pays occidentaux, reconnaissent leur propre part de responsabilité dans le drame qui déchire actuellement l'Europe. C'est par l'honnêteté que nous créerons la confiance et c'est par la confiance que nous saurons construire la paix. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. And now, floor is for Skaidrite Abrama from Latvia, followed by Valérie Boyer from France.
Dear colleagues, thank you. First, I would like to stress that the support to Ukraine is an absolute priority for Latvia. However, speaking about OSCE, I am convinced that OSCE must do much more to make decisive steps, decisions to provide continued and long-term political as well as all necessary support to Ukraine. If we look at the OSCE webpage, what OSCE has done for Ukraine over the last year, it looks very modest information is here available. Some seminars, discussions, the recent OSCE statement on war, that is far from being enough. We in Latvia know that we must help as much as possible Ukraine to withstand and defeat the aggressor. More than 1% of Latvia's GDP, gross domestic product, means has reached Latvia's military support for Ukraine since the beginning of the war, placing our country in the leaders of Ukraine supporters. And recently established so-called drone coalition, Latvia has initiated this drone coalition to provide 1 million drones for Ukraine's needs. Many thanks to all 8 European countries who joined this drone coalition. And we invite as well other countries to join Latvian-led drone coalition. Ukraine must not be left alone in this unjustified, unequal war. And to my second point, dear members of the panel, I would like to ask you, as it was said in the previous joint sessions, the OSCE officials have been calling for the release of the OSCE mission members who have been sentenced to imprisonment by Russian proxies in eastern Ukraine. But what efforts exactly are being made to secure the release? Isn't it that OSCE officials are using a very diplomatic language and avoiding to explicitly blame the Russian Federation? I strongly believe that more should be done by OSCE to secure the release of the OSCE mission members and not to allow that a similar fate might befall them as Navalny. Thank you.
Thank you, Skaidrite. Thank you very much. Now, floor is for Valérie Boyer from France, followed by Tanis Papatanassis from Greece.
Mesdames et messieurs, mes chers collègues, j'aurais aimé pouvoir me réjouir devant vous aujourd'hui d'avancées certaines vers une paix juste et durable entre l'Arménie et l'Azerbaïdjan. Il n'en est malheureusement rien. Bien au contraire, l'espoir né de la déclaration commune du 7 décembre 2023 dans laquelle les deux pays se sont engagés à prendre des mesures, je cite, concrètes visant à renforcer la confiance et ont réaffirmé leur intention de normaliser leurs liens et de signer un accord de paix semble désormais terni. Les déclarations azerbaïdjanaises qui s'en prennent selon le cas soit à l'Arménie soit à la France ne montrent aucune volonté d'apaisement. Chers collègues, souvenons-nous de la déclaration de Prague le 6 octobre 2022. L'Arménie et l'Azerbaïdjan avaient confirmé leur attachement à la Charte des Nations Unies et à la déclaration d'Alma-Ata de 91, par laquelle tous deux reconnaissaient mutuellement leur intégrité territoriale et leur souveraineté. Souvenons-nous de l'espoir créé par l'échange de prisonniers entre les deux pays en décembre dernier. Mais je rappelle que les dirigeants d'Artsakh, dont je citais les noms à notre réunion à Yerevan, sont toujours prisonniers. Il serait d'ailleurs intéressant que l'OSCE s'en soucie aujourd'hui. Leur sort ne doit pas être passé sous silence. Nous demandons à l'Azerbaïdjan de cesser les provocations verbales et de cesser de décrier toute initiative venant de l'Arménie, comme cela a été fait au moins à 2 reprises fin janvier. L'Arménie, en transférant les cartes des zones minées à l'Azerbaïdjan et en proposant un plan B pour pallier l'éventualité d'un retard de signature de traité de paix entre les deux pays, avance pour restaurer la confiance, contrairement à ce qu'affirme l'Azerbaïdjan. Mi-janvier, à l'Assemblée parlementaire dans laquelle je siège, le Sénat français a adopté une résolution condamnant l'offensive militaire de l'Azerbaïdjan au Haut-Karabakh et visant à prévenir toute autre tentative d'agression et de violation de l'intégrité territoriale de la République d'Arménie. Nous continuons d'affirmer cette position parce que nous constatons toute volonté d'expansion territoriale, même si aujourd'hui 31 villages sont occupés arméniens dans la zone de la République d'Arménie sont occupés par l'Azerbaïdjan. Nous demandons que le traité de paix tant attendu soit négocié et que cessent toutes les fausses excuses pour le repousser. Nous demandons bien évidemment l'instauration d'une paix juste et durable dans cette zone et encourageant les deux pays à accepter les mains tendues pour y parvenir. Mais nous sommes extrêmement inquiets. Je rappelle les représailles disproportionnées de l'Azerbaïdjan, les menaces et les provocations. Un exemple pour conclure, mes chers collègues. Stepanakert, depuis l'épuration ethnique des Arméniens, la grande voie de Stepanakert a été dénommée d'un génocidaire de 1915. Si on n'y voit pas là une provocation et une volonté belliqueuse, que pouvons-nous y voir? Affirmons tous ensemble notre attachement à une solution pacifique et équilibrée. Il en va aujourd'hui de l'avenir de cette partie du Caucase et surtout de ses habitants qui aspirent certainement à vivre en paix. Il en va aussi de l'avenir des autres pays dont les frontières sont menacées et qui ont été cités dans cette Assemblée. Je vous remercie.
Now floor is Stanis Papatanassis from Greece and followed by Tural Ganjaliev from Azerbaijan.
1 minute. 1 minute. Πάρ' το βίντεο, το δώσες. Το βίντεο το δώσες. Παιδιά, αν είναι δυνατόν. Honorable members of the committee, we convene today amid the somber backdrop of conflict where the principles of international law and the tenets of human dignity are fiercely challenged. Within the borders of Ukraine, a sovereign nation, we witness the consequences of Russia's aggression, a war that has not only destabilized the region, but also undermined the security framework of our broader European community. The OSCE has a critical role to play in these trying times. Since the onset of hostilities, the OSCE has endeavored to monitor the situation, report on human rights abuses, and facilitate dialogue among stakeholders. Yet the continually evolving landscape calls for a dynamic response from our organization, one that evolves as quickly as the conflict itself. Our commitment to comprehensive security concept, one that encompasses political, military, economic, environmental, and human dimensions, but be the cornerstone of our work in Ukraine. It is not enough to denounce infractions. We must actively partake in the stabilization of the region, supporting Ukraine in its fight to uphold its sovereignty and territorial integrity. As parliamentarians, our words carry weight, and our actions have the potential to create reaps of change. In aligning with the OSCE's endeavors, we must ensure that our collective effort fosters resilience and delivers tangible support to those battered by the turbulent waves of this aggression. In conclusion, I call upon all members of this committee to consider the gravest implications of this conflict. I urge the OSCE to reinforce its presence, to remain vigilant and to act diligently. Let us be the architects of peace and the harbingers of a future where adherence to international law is not optional but mandatory. In the words of Eleanor Roosevelt, it is enough to talk about peace. One must believe in it, and it is enough to believe in it. One must work at it. Let us work at it diligently and persistently. Thank you.
Thank you. Now floor is for Tural Ganjaliev from Azerbaijan, followed by Irina Gerashenko from Ukraine.
Thank you.
Merci, chers collègues. Ces derniers temps, les cercles politiques de la République française, y compris le gouvernement, le Sénat et l'Assemblée nationale, ont intensifié leurs activités ouvertement racistes, xénophobes, islamophobes envers l'Azerbaïdjan et sur la base d'instructions directes provenant du palais de l'Élysée. Des députés français continuent de prendre des mesures injustes contre l'intégrité territoriale et la souveraineté de l'Azerbaïdjan, démontrant un manque flagrant de respect pour les normes et principes du droit international. Bien que le respect de l'intégrité territoriale de la République d'Azerbaïdjan dans les frontières internationalement reconnues soit une obligation internationale à la fois multilatérale et bilatérale de la part de la France, celle-ci a remis en question l'intégrité territoriale et la souveraineté souveraineté de notre pays dans les projets de résolution initiés par la France, aussi bien à l'intérieur du pays qu'au sein d'organisations internationales. En vendant des armes et des munitions à l'Arménie, la France attaque la normalisation de ses relations avec l'Azerbaïdjan, encourage les forces revanchistes en Arménie à déclencher une nouvelle guerre. Les actions destructrices et provocatives du gouvernement français ainsi que de son Sénat, de son Assemblée nationale, aussi ses députés, visent à entraver la mise en œuvre du programme de paix entre l'Azerbaïdjan et l'Arménie et à aggraver la situation dans la région du Caucase du Sud. Nous invitons les parlementaires français dans l'OSCE, l'Assemblée parlementaire, à faire preuve de leur volonté politique pour prévenir les manifestations croissantes de racisme, d'antisémitisme, de turcophobie et d'islamophobie dans le pays et adopter une résolution visant à prévenir ces situations. Chers collègues, aussi, I would like to invite my French colleagues that the city that they say, I represent the city of Hankandi, which I'm very proud of, and I would like to say to our French colleagues that if they are so concerned about the Armenian so-called Artsakh, they can establish the so-called entity, for example, in Marseille, where many Armenians live, and we can rename it Martsakh, and they can live very happily in France. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, floor is for Irina Gerashchenko from Ukraine, followed by Mark Wiese from United States of America.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. Ukraine is suffering significant losses, human, economic, and territorial. As of now, Ukrainian losses due to the Russian war are estimated at around 500 billion. Therefore, it is crucial to make a consolidated decision regarding the confiscation of Russian assets and their transfer for the reconstruction of Ukraine. Support from the European Council in the form of allocating 50 billion euro on the Ukrainian facility has become critically necessary for Ukraine. However, if military aid and missile defense system are not reinforced, the situation will become critical. Russia holds a significant advantage in weaponry and human resources. Unfortunately, Russia circumvents sanctions by obtaining weapons components that bypass sanctions. To stop the killing, it is necessary to track and block sanctions evasions. Ukraine's struggle in the task of all of Europe and the democratic world. Putin will not stop at Ukraine. He will go further. He is a serial killer who murdered his opponents. He killed Navalny and Nemtsov. He kills Ukrainians. If he senses weakness from the international community, he will attack NATO states. We thank the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly for condemning the illegal deportation of Ukrainian children and the genocide of Ukrainians. We must collectively work toward punishment for Russia and the establishment of an international tribunal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So now the floor is for Mark Wiese from United States and followed by Christian Klink from Germany.
Thank you. Ukraine is currently fighting with everything it has to preserve democracy, its independence, and its sovereignty. And we, the people of the member states of the OSCE, should do everything we can to support them. Free societies show that authoritarianism is neither necessary nor desirable. Dictators all over the world, therefore, see these societies as a threat. The only way to preserve democracy in the face of aggressive authoritarians is to arm ourselves and be strong enough to ensure that dictators do not even consider military action. This begins with Ukrainian victory. As President Zelensky said, freedom must be better armed than tyranny. Do we really want to go back in time? I know that I don't. Do we want to go back to the time of checkpoints and sirens? Do we want to go back to a time when what was left of free societies lived in constant fear and half of Europe lived under repressive Russian tyranny? Do we want to go back in time to when simply crossing a border to seek freedom would get you shot on sight? This is the Russian world, the world that Putin wants to expand, a world safe for tyranny, a world where simply criticizing your own country leads to imprisonment or death, or as we just witnessed, Putin's assassination of Navalny. All we have to do to preserve democracy in Ukraine and everywhere today is support Ukraine. It's really that simple. We must send Ukraine everything it needs to win, to fully restore its internationally recognized borders, and fulfill our promise to see this inspiring country integrated into Euro-Atlantic security institutions. I urge all of my colleagues to do everything they can to put pressure on their governments to achieve Ukrainian victory and provide all the resources necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, floor is for Christian Kling from Germany, followed by Luc Berthold from Canada.
Mr. Chair, dear colleagues, supporting Ukraine with diplomatic efforts, with financial, humanitarian and military aid remains crucial. I'm glad to inform you that the German Parliament will pass a resolution today that renews Germany's commitment to Ukraine. I also want to thank the American delegation, including the chair Richard Hudson, who cannot be with us today, for their invaluable support for the help package that is currently discussed in Congress. And further, I want to thank the acting chair, dear Laurinas Kastunis, for your untiring work to supporting Ukraine and strengthening the European security architecture. But more above that, I want to thank you all for your work in the OSCE EPA in its first committee. Dear colleagues, I strongly believe that contrary to the Russian tyrant's efforts, freedom and justice will prevail. I'm also convinced that the best days of the OSCE EPA still lay ahead of us. In the last 2 years, this committee has worked productively on various security issues. This committee has also contributed much to the OSCE EPA having adopted a very strong position on the Russian war of aggression, across party lines, ideologies and regional interests. This performance shows the strength of the OSCE EPA and its first committee. Let me therefore say very clearly that the de facto suspension of the membership by the Russian delegation does not in any way affect the legitimacy of the PA. On the contrary, the Russian decision proves the legitimacy of the PA and its committees, whose position is consistent with the UN Charter and the international law. Dear colleagues, again, thank you all. I'm looking forward to work with you until the lasting peace under conditions favorable to Ukraine can be achieved and beyond that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Christian. Now, floor is for Luc Berthold from Canada and followed by Lilith Minassian from Armenia.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Samedi, cela fera 2 ans que le régime de Vladimir Poutine a lancé une attaque sauvage et illégale contre le peuple ukrainien. Où en sommes-nous après 2 ans? Quel est le bilan des parlementaires de l'Assemblée parlementaire de l'OSCE? Où en est le soutien des pays que nous représentons ici alors que la fatigue de la guerre s'installe, comme elle le fait inévitablement chaque fois qu'un conflit s'étire? Le temps est un allié de Poutine. L'Ukraine, devant cette agression sauvage, a surpris par la force de résistance et la volonté de ses citoyens de ne pas laisser Poutine prendre et détruire leur pays. L'Ukraine a su compter dès le départ sur un appui fort de ses alliés qui lui ont fourni les armes et l'argent pour rester debout. Mais toutes les armes et l'argent du monde ne rendront pas la vie à celles et ceux qui ont perdu la vie à la suite de cette agression ignoble. Victimes innocentes ou militaires, nous nous souviendrons d'eux. Aujourd'hui, comme parlementaires, nous avons le devoir de continuer à parler de l'Ukraine ici, à l'Assemblée parlementaire de l'OSCE, mais aussi dans nos pays et parlements, parce que l'agression sauvage de Poutine se poursuit, malgré toutes les ressources déjà investies par tous pour le repousser. Je vais vous parler comme conservateur canadien qui supporte inconditionnellement l'Ukraine depuis le début de cette agression. Je vais vous parler comme un parlementaire conservateur canadien qui ne détient pas le pouvoir décisionnel d'un gouvernement, mais de son siège de l'opposition. J'appelle mon pays et tous les pays de l'OSCE à en faire davantage, à respecter la parole donnée et à continuer de maintenir une pression forte et constante sur le régime de Poutine, tant et aussi longtemps qu'il ne sera pas retiré complètement de l'Ukraine. Les conservateurs canadiens soutiennent l'Ukraine dans sa lutte pour protéger son intégrité territoriale contre l'invasion illégale de la Russie et de Vladimir Poutine. Beaucoup de promesses ont été faites par beaucoup de gouvernements en place. Malheureusement, trop de ces promesses ne se sont pas transformées en aide concrète sur le terrain. C'est inacceptable. Il est temps de livrer la marchandise, de respecter la parole donnée et de participer à la victoire de l'Ukraine sur le terrain. Parlons de l'Ukraine, parlons de la guerre que les Russes n'ont même pas le droit de nommer. Parlons de l'avenir que nous voulons pour nos enfants. Parlementaires, parlons ensemble de l'Ukraine pour que nos gouvernements, eux, agissent pour l'Ukraine.
Thank you so much. I just want to announce that we still have 8 members to speak, and it's a final list. Final list. So now floor is for Lilith Minasyan from Armenia, please.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, I'd like to talk about the cornerstone of our society, democracy. Democracy is more than just a system of governance. It is a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of the people, and a foundation for peace and progress. Lately, I think more and more why the international community faces such challenges. It's not diverse interests and perspectives or power dynamics and geopolitical rivalries. It's not even weak international institutions or failure of conflict resolution mechanisms. I'm sure that the main reason is that we are going farther from our values as an international community. Ignoring or turning a blind eye to autocracy can have serious consequences for global peace, stability, and human rights. Democratic nations do not seek war. Instead, they strive for peace, stability, and prosperity for their citizens and for the world at large. Authoritarian regimes often rely on the creation of external enemies to maintain their grip on power and control over their populations. By scapegoating foreign entities, these regimes divert attention away from domestic issues, suppress dissent, and justify repressive measures. This strategy ultimately undermines stability and perpetuates cycle of conflict and oppression. They don't want peace. As we see, they bring up new conditions not to lose the idea of external enemy, and it is important to acknowledge that democracies are not immune to the pressures and complexities of the world. They face threats from authoritarian regimes, other actors who seek to undermine democratic values and provoke conflict. In conclusion, we can prevent autocracy, aggression, or war by addressing and voicing the threat of democratic values. Let us confirm our commitment to democracy in Armenia and peace in our region. Let us reject the false dichotomy between democracy and war, and instead embrace the belief that through democracy we can build a more peaceful and prosperous world for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to give a floor for Mayor Habib from France, followed by Wilhelm Junila from Finland. So, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je vais sortir de mes notes pour vous dire à quel point je suis inquiet. Inquiet quand j'écoute ces débats, inquiet parce que je ne vois pas le bout du tunnel, inquiet parce que 2 ans après l'agression de la Russie contre l'Ukraine, je ne vois pas vers où nous allons. Nous allons commémorer en France dans quelques mois le 80e anniversaire du débarquement des Alliés en Normandie, qui fut un immense moment. Mais aujourd'hui, quand je vois que l'Iran, un pays islamiste qui massacre son peuple, est à 2 doigts d'avoir l'arme nucléaire, quand je vois ce qui se passe en Arménie, quand je vois que le Hezbollah est en train de prendre le Liban, les islamistes, où s'ajoutent, quand je vois les Houthis au Yémen qui sont en train de bloquer le canal de Suez, quand je vois nos amis turcs aujourd'hui, le grand pays turc, qui donne des leçons au minuscule État juif, un État juif autour de 52 États musulmans, mais sans doute un État de trop pour certains donner des leçons, je suis inquiet. Je suis inquiet parce que aujourd'hui, au moment où je vous parle, et comme je l'ai dit tout à l'heure dans mon propos liminaire, un enfant de 1 an qui s'appelle Kfir est maintenu en otage. Alors on pourrait arrêter immédiatement cette guerre. En libérant les otages, tout s'arrêterait immédiatement. Israël est un État des plus moraux du monde, et je le dis en tant que député français qui représente les Français d'Israël. Israël est un État qui, avant de bombarder, envoie des tracts pour la population évacue. Mais nous-mêmes, à Dresde, à Berlin, en Normandie, on a eu des centaines de milliers de victimes collatérales. Aurait-on imaginer de ne pas bombarder le bunker d'Hitler comme on l'a fait? Quand j'entends les déclarations invraisemblables de Lula, le président du grand pays qu'est le Brésil, qui met en accusation le seul et unique État juif, victime après la Shoah de nazis, en le traitant de nazi. C'est pour ça qu'aujourd'hui, mes chers collègues, je suis inquiet. Et puis je suis triste parce que je ne vois pas l'issue du tunnel. Je ne vois pas le rayon de soleil. Je ne vois pas l'OSCE est fait pour la paix, pour l'entente, pour la démocratie. Mais nous sommes tellement loin de nos valeurs. Je voulais avoir 100 notes aujourd'hui, vous faire part un peu de ce que j'ai au fond de mon cœur. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. Now the floor is for Wilhelm Junila from Finland, and followed by Serhiy Yevtushok from Ukraine.
Distinguished Chairman, dear colleagues, yesterday the European Union agreed on the 13th package of sanctions against Russia to target individuals and businesses suspected of assisting Kremlin in its war against Ukraine. The decision comes days after the suspicious death of opposition leader Alexei Navalny. In that respect, I find it appropriate to quote Yulia Navalnaya. They will be held responsible for what they have done to our country, my family and my husband, and that day will come very soon. Although the sanctions have restricted Kremlin's ability to obtain sophisticated technology and raise the cost of war for Russian society, the Kremlin's military-industrial complex has proven to be surprisingly adaptable, partly because of help from the third countries. New sanctions include up to 200 parties who have aided Kremlin's war machine by giving access to technologies and components. I encourage all member states to further increase pressure. Even Chinese banks have now tightened compliance checks on Russian businesses. We should concentrate on restricting dual-use products. This is a long grind. I fully agree with Mr. Poturayev. Action is the antidote to despair. In words of late John F. Kennedy, there are risks and costs to action, but they are far less than the long-range risks of comfortable inaction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wilhelm. Thank you. And now the floor is for Victoria Spartz from United States of America. Please, and it's followed by Ludovic Hayet from France.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking forward to talking to my fellow parliamentarians from over 15 countries. And I'll talk to you this time as a conservative Republican, since you don't hear much from the media what our positions are. And you hear about this is a people that hate immigrants and women. Actually, this is a people that elected an immigrant woman to the United States Congress. Europe is in a major war, and the world is in a major war. It's a war of tyrannies against democracy. China, Russia, and Iran, they team up in a hybrid war. It's not just war of artillery, it's a cyber war and war of propaganda. West has been weak with a lot of talks and no decisive actions, with stupid, unrealistic energy policies that making money for aggressors and hurting our citizens. You worry about climate change? Let's look at all of the major catastrophes. You worry about all of the nuclear power? Well, let's see, Iran is on the brink of getting nuclear weapons, and there is a high risk of nuclear proliferation. American people will stand for freedoms, as they always have, but they are frustrated with talks and stupidity. You know, we're dealing with criminals, former KGB agents, terrorists, and communist governments. We have to prevail for all people that sacrifice their lives for our freedoms. But each of you, as the leader of the country, should really think, when you look back, where have you done, where have you been, when free world was falling. I hope you will make the right call and put your money where your mouth is. Surrender and failure is not an option. I yield back.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Victoria. And now floor is for Ludovic Hayet from France. Please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, mes chers collègues. Nous sommes dans une assemblée parlementaire ici, composée de parlementaires. Nous exprimons des opinions politiques sur les conflits en cours, de souhaits de paix et de sécurité. Personnellement, je n'ai pas remis en cause les institutions de l'Azerbaïdjan. Et je proteste très vigoureusement contre les propos tenus par le délégué de l'Azerbaïdjan sur les institutions de la République française et du Parlement français dont je suis membre et du Sénat en particulier. Ces manquements inouïs des bonnes pratiques parlementaires doivent être discuter, voire même sanctionner. Le désir de provoquer ne justifie pas tout. Voilà ce que je voulais vous dire aujourd'hui, mes chers collègues. Si nous nous réjouissons de parler avec 51 autres pays, ce n'est pas pour remettre en cause leurs institutions et en plus avoir des attaques personnelles. Au passage, je rappelle que la France est un État qui n'est pas communautaire et que quand on est français, on ne s'occupe pas des origines des personnes, ni de leur religion.
Dear colleagues, we're almost finishing, but we have one point of order. So, Selami Altinok from Turkey. Please, 1 minute, no more.
Evet. Fransız meslektaşlarımı anlamakta zorlanıyorum. Fransız meslektaşları saldırgan bir dil kullanmak yerine yapıcı bir yaklaşımla Güney Kafkasya'daki barış ve istikrar çabalarına samimi bir destek vermeye çağırıyorum. İhtilaflı tarihi konularda en son konuşacak olan devlet Fransa'dır. Özellikle Fransa'nın önce kendi utanılacak geçmişiyle yüzleşmesi gerekir. Ayrıca İsrail'in Gazze'de uygulamış olduğu soykırımla alakalı söylediklerimizin yanına Hamas'ın çocukları da kadınları da rehin alarak elinde tutmasını da kınadığımızı, İsrail'in ama 29.410 insanı katletmesinin gerçeğini ortadan kaldırmayacağını belirtmek istiyorum, özellikle açıklamak istiyorum. Fransa, Azerbaycan ve Ermenistan arasındaki anlaşma noktasında, uzlaşma noktasında yapıcı olması lazım gelirken böyle çatışmacı ve suçlayıcı bir konuşma yapmak durumunda değildir. Buna hiçbir şekilde hakkı yoktur.
You see, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. It's democracy.
Biz burada konuşurken Fransa'dan izin alacak değiliz.
Okay, stop.
Herkes kendi özgür iradesiyle konuşuyor. Fransa hiç kimseye vesayet makamı değildir.
Discussion and to go further. So let me stop. Let me stop. Yes, but anyway, let me stop. Okay? Everybody who asked, I gave an opportunity. I cannot control what the people are talking, you know? So, okay. Okay, stop. No. Colleagues, now we move to our final item on the agenda for today. Does any member wish to raise any other business at this time? It's not connected for the historical discussion which we had today also. I don't see. Colleagues, on your behalf, I would like to thank all of our speakers today for their contributions to our discussion, and more importantly, for the important work they do in the interests of our citizens every day. I also, of course, I am grateful to our staff, Manu, for you too, for helping us to prepare these meetings, and of course interpreters. I am so sorry, but I was sticking the pen to the microphone and they were so suffering. So thank you, our interpreters, for helping us to communicate. Our committee will next meet during the annual session in Bucharest in June, July. And now I declare the 24th winter meeting of OSCE Parliamentary Assembly General Committee on Political Affairs and Security is closed. Thank you.